Was I going with that? All right. Son of a biscuit. Hey! Shut up! Yeah. A leaf. A stone. What is it? The air. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jaime Leigh and I'm a mixed media artist, and here on my channel I do videos about mixed media art techniques and supplies, and I also do some videos on stories in the art world that I find interesting or fascinating, and I hope that you will subscribe, like this video, ring the bell, do all the things if you are into art and interesting art stuff. Okay, so y'all, I am just going to be super honest here and say that basically this video is me saying I need to learn to take my own art advice. If you're wondering what in the world I'm talking about, a couple weeks ago I made a video called "Is Art Still Important in Times of Crisis?" Obviously the world has gone a little crazy right now, and I was just talking about the fact that even in times of crisis throughout history, art has still been really important. I basically was saying that I still think it's important to do art if you're an artist, if you're a creator, especially since a lot of people have been at home and looking for things to do and ways to occupy their time. So creating is a great way to get stuff out there to people. Unfortunately, I really suck at taking my own advice, apparently. Let me explain. After I made that video, for the past couple of weeks, have been, I guess, dealing with what I would call art block, and maybe it's more creativity block, I don't know. If you've ever heard of writer's block, where you want to do the thing, but every time you go to do the thing, something stops you. I know in The War of Art, Steven Pressfield calls it resistance, because it does. It feels like you hit a brick wall of no momentum, no ideas, no want or can do, and you feel stuck. I have definitely been dealing with some of that. It's kind of been getting me down. In addition to dealing with all this craziness that's going on in the world, my creative outlet that I normally go to has kind of been shut off, so that has sucked. And if any of you are having the same type of issue, I hope this might help a little bit, knowing, number one, other people deal with it too, because I know that's something that I get into, thinking when I am down that I'm the only person dealing with this, and then you go online or you look at other things being created and you see people putting up videos and you see people showing their artwork and you're scrolling through Instagram and you're like, everybody else is not dealing with this. Well, I am, so I assume other people must be too. And some of the times I've been dealing with thoughts of, okay, so am I just lazy? Is that what it is? I just want to sit and drink coffee and watch YouTube? Or am I just unmotivated? Is something else going on? Am I losing my enthusiasm for doing art? Is it just the things that I'm working on right now? I had like all these questions, like a tornado swirling. Throughout that time, I was just not working on art. I mean, I did do other things. So I created the 2 videos on the Gardner Art Museum heist, which I will link those. That actually took quite a bit of time to do, a lot more time than I was expecting. One thing I haven't been doing is actually sitting down to paint. So I kind of think in general that I had a little bit of a pity party for myself, and then at the end of that pity party, when I was like, all right, come on, let's figure this thing out, I got to thinking about, okay, well, maybe I just needed a break. Sometimes that does happen, and you get to the point where you just need a break and to focus on other things, and you can come back to the art, it'll be there. That might have been part of it. And then the other thing is, any other time I've ever dealt with an issue where I felt either burned out or wasn't working on art, it's because I got to a certain point in my artwork and I didn't know how to move forward. And what I thought I'd do for today's video is I'm going to show you the artwork that I've been working on and kind of talk about why I think I came to a stopping point. It is an awful lot like when you're writing a song or writing a book or anything like that, where you get to a point and you're not sure where to go from there. And so you just kind of put it away for a while so you can deal with other things, and then later on, a lot of times you can come back to it and go, oh, that's why I needed to do that. But it takes that time away before you can see that. And then sometimes you just kind of get bored with something, or you have, I say you, I mean me, have shiny object syndrome, where you always want to start the next thing because it's fun and exciting. And the way I work, I don't try to focus on one painting at a time. I've tried that before and it just doesn't work for me. I have many paintings going at once and I kind of bounce back and forth between all of them. So right now I have nine paintings going, and if I'm going to be completely honest, there's probably more than 9. I will show you the 9 paintings and then I'll kind of talk about why I got stuck and how I think I will help myself kind of finish these. If that sounds interesting to you, please hang around, and here is painting number 1. So this painting is probably my closest to being completed. She's actually pretty much everything, the background and most of her is done. However, here's what I ran into as a problem. Up here in this area on her forehead, originally it kind of looked like she had this big ugly bruise, like she was a zombie or something, and that really wasn't what I was going for. So I had to figure out, I liked everything else about it. Like her face looked good, the background looked good, I love the colors. Like everything was working except for that giant ugly bruise on her forehead. So I put her away for a little while wondering, how am I going to fix that? And so then I went back in and I removed some of the paint that was there, and I applied gesso over that removed paint. I removed it with mostly turpentine, but a little bit of rubbing alcohol. Both of those will get oil paint off, and this is an oil painting. This part, the background, is not oil. It's actually mixed media and a little bit of oil on the outline of her. I removed that oil paint, I put gesso, which is white, and then I let it kind of set, and I went over it again, trying to make it match the rest of her and not stand out so badly. And I think I've gotten to a place where I do like what I did. I think it works much better than it did before. She's got the highlight on her forehead, but it doesn't really take away from the rest of the painting, so I'm happy with it. However, I don't know if you can see it, but that part I fixed is shiny and the rest of her is not. I'm a little confused as to why it came out so shiny, but I think what will happen is once I fix this with my clear coat, everything will be brought to the same level, so it really is not going to matter. I'm hoping that's what will work, because I don't think I need to work anymore on that area. And as far as I can tell, she's pretty much complete. That is painting number 1. So it only has like one tiny thing to do, and then I'll be finished with that. Now this painting here has had a bit of a journey. She is a painting that came from my mentor. He actually had a start of a portrait on here and he just didn't want to mess with it anymore. So he actually gave it to me and asked me if I just wanted to take it, finish it, do whatever. So I said, yeah. So originally I was going to take what he had started and complete that, but I ran into a lot of problems because I did not have a reference photo. He couldn't find it, so I was kind of flying blind. The proportions were a little bit off and I didn't know how to fix them because I didn't have any reference. It kind of got to looking janky and I was like, you know what? I think I might take another reference photo that is a similar pose and just do that instead. So that's where I got her from. Her pose that she has is close to what the original was, so it works pretty well. What happened and why I got stuck is that I realized I had the hair from the first portrait basically, and I had put her as a new face that was more in proportion, and I actually had a photo to go with it. It ended up looking like she had a 12,000 mile long neck, which that's not gonna work. This is the area that I need to fix before she's done, and honestly I think maybe except for touching up a few other areas, I need to darken under her eye and maybe work on a little bit of over here. I had darkened her cheek and removed some strands of hair so that you can see the side of her face better, But other than that and fixing this neck area, she's pretty much done. The background is completely done. I actually absolutely love this background. I am so happy with how that turned out. So I really want the portrait to look the way I want it as well. In order to fix her neck area, because I had it kind of going here with the hair, and it just, she looked like a giraffe, honestly. And you can kind of still see some of that here, but I'm going to have to insert a, you know, the hint of a shoulder and then kind of work with the hair to give her that defined shoulder and chest area so that she doesn't look like she's all neck. I think the reason why I got tripped up with it is I wasn't entirely sure how I was going to do that. So I just kind of let her sit. That's two paintings that are close to being completed, and I just got hung up at the end because I wanted to make sure that the finished product was as good as it could be. Now this painting is different for me because I've honestly never really worked on a landscape before. I really like doing portraits. That's mostly what I have been working on. And so the reason I came up with wanting to do this painting is because I went to my art class and I asked my instructor, you know, is there a way to do a landscape or landscapes that's just not super boring? Because I personally, and this is just me, find a lot of them to be boring. Like just the idea of painting like the same trees and lake over and over again or whatever. I'm much more interested in human faces, so I wasn't sure how that worked. And he said, well, yeah, absolutely, there is a way to do it that's interesting, and you know, you should probably try it out to see if you can make it interesting for yourself. So I did. I found a photo that I wanted to use that had what I thought were exciting colors. I loved the almost like fall like feel of the background. And then up in the front here was all in shadow. I did a mixed media background, and then I went over it with oil, and then I do have some mixed media in the tree areas. And so this one is, I'm not sure how done. Like that's why I stopped working on it. Like I know there's more I can do, but I was like, okay, how far do I go? I don't know. I've never done a landscape before. Do I keep defining things? I know I need to work more on the fence. I need to add more branches and definition. Do I add individual leaves? How do I finish this? So that's where I got stuck, and I'm not sure what to do. And I'm really happy with it so far. Like it's actually been kind of fun just to bring it a little bit more to life and have it not be so abstract, even though it does have, you know, all this mixed media down here, which is definitely not realistic, but I like the combination. So that's where I'm at with this painting. This is another one that I feel like is, if not completed, like just on the verge of being completed, and she has come through several stages. I originally started this painting maybe almost 2 years ago. It was a while, and I had it sit for a long time because I just was working on other stuff. And when I finally did get back to this one, I had completely lost my reference photo. I have no idea what happened to it. I might have accidentally like filed it somewhere, can't find it. I kind of felt like I was flying blind to complete it because I had a good start, but then to complete it I needed to add a lot of detail to the face and the hair. I had done the background and I was real happy with the background. So basically it was just working on the face to make it the best I could come up with without having a photo to go by. The last thing I did was work on the hair and making that the way I wanted. I actually really wanted to have this kind of flyaway look because it was interesting to me because the rest of it was so calm. So I did the hair that way on purpose, and I'm happy with that. And I know on her face, I do have some work to do pretty much right here, and then working on this piece right here that follows her face a little too closely, and I don't want it doing that. Her eyes are, I would say they're close to being finished. I might need to do a little more with them, but mostly that upper lip area right below the nose and the lip is what I'm needing to finish before she's completely done. And so she's not really that far from being done either. I think I must have like finishing syndrome when I get right to the end of like the finishing, almost to the finishing line, and I can see it in sight. That's when I give up and I need to quit doing that. But then the next, probably I'd say all the rest of the paintings are not as close to being completed as those paintings I just showed you are. I started this one about the same time as the girl with the flyaway hair. I had originally done a different face on here. What I found is after I pulled this one back out, the face I had on it was very small. It looked like it was kind of just floating in the middle of the canvas and it didn't really make sense. So I thought, what can I do to fix this? Maybe a different face and to make it bigger and take up more of the canvas, because I did like the pieces in the background, but there was too much background. So I found a new face, and as you can tell, you can only see part of her face. It fades off into the bottom, and then she has a really big headdress type thing, and it's seashells. It's very detailed. Started with the face and got that kind of blocked in, and then went to kind of defining a little bit of where the shells in her crown are going to be. And I think I got overwhelmed because there's so much detail in this part here, and then this is a little less detailed. So I knew I would have to come in here and be super focused because these are very shiny. In the photo, it's really all about the different colors that make it look three-dimensional, and so it is going to be a lot of work to do, and I just kind of got overwhelmed with the thought of doing it. So in order to finish this one, what I'm going to need to do is just know that it will take some time, and I'm going to have to be pretty detailed in order to do it. I'm happy so far with where I've got here. I like the fact that this takes up a lot of the canvas and it didn't before, and she's just kind of emerging. So I'm happy with where it's going, but it's going to take a little while to finish. Next up, I have a pair of paintings. They kind of go together, not because like they're the same type of photo or whatever, just the concept. I had this in mind to do for a long time, and I finally got started on it, and I really love her, you know, Day of the Dead, voodoo, skull, whatever makeup. And so I really loved how fierce and almost angry she looks. I just love the expression. So I started working on this with painting her face and then doing this in the background with some ink, and her face is oil, so it will end up being mixed media. I am planning to go here and do mixed media in the background like I normally do on my paintings. I didn't really get stuck on her so much as this area here is extremely detailed with making sure the teeth and her lips look correct, and I think I kind of just needed to take a break from doing that. In taking a break from her, I started working on him, and he is basically a voodoo king. He is very, very much at the beginning stages. I literally just drew on the canvas and then I painted the background black. This is actually acrylic, black acrylic, just so I could have the dark background because he's pretty much emerging from the darkness, and there's a lot of parts in this painting that are incredibly dark, shadowy areas. I figured to do black acrylic would be the best way to handle the background, and then I'm going to come back later and do mixed media back there too. I just need to really just work on this to bring it, you know, from just a sketchy idea to a completed painting. So this one's not close to being completed at all. But I kind of feel like this goes together with the girl I just showed you with the angry expression, kind of that skull voodoo idea. She is obviously much closer to being completed than he is. So for her, it's going to take some working on those teeth that are on her face to make the skull or skeleton, and then working on the background, and then just making everything a lot more detailed. So that's all that's going to take. You can probably understand why this one might be taking a long time. It is huge. My instructor was working on a architectural painting, and it was really big like this one. And it had to do with the like pagoda style Chinese buildings, and he had like one really big one and then some, you know, kind of city or town in the background, and then some figures in it. And so I thought it would be interesting to try my version of that. This is the St. Louis Cemetery #1 in New Orleans, which we went to New Orleans this past summer before any craziness happened. Like, they had a bad flood and now we've got this going on. So I'm glad we got to see it before all of this stuff happened. My idea was to have, obviously, my figure walking toward the viewer out of the graveyard. And so there's several layers to this. The reason, obviously, I haven't finished this one is because it's just, there's a lot to it. So I am still working on this gigantic painting as well. I don't even know if I measured how big it is. There are 42 inches right there. So 42 inches high by 4 feet, 48 inches wide. And I did build this frame myself. I went to Hobby Lobby and I bought a big roll of canvas, and the actual wood frame piece that I put the canvas on was built for me by my instructor. I attached my canvas to the frame using staples, and then I gessoed the whole thing, and then I drew all of my painting on there and then started painting. So I would guess this one is maybe not quite halfway done. Like, there's still quite a bit to do. So this one's gonna take me a while. There's just, you know, it's big and there's a lot to work on. And finally, I have this here. This is pretty much like the equivalent of a sketch. I had vintage photo of this man, and I did it a long time ago. I will show a photo so you can see. This was probably maybe 4 years ago. So it was back when I was really just like teaching myself how to do art, and I always found myself fascinated by his face, and I just really wanted to do an actual painting of him now that I have a little bit more skill in what I'm doing. So this right here is where I start when I do my painting. I literally just drew them on here, blocked in some color areas with gouache, which if you've ever worked with gouache, it can go on pretty vibrant, but it's a water-based, not like a oil-based. So if I were to go back on here, this was probably maybe a month ago, maybe more, that I actually did the drawing and the gouache on here. If I were to go back on here with water and start putting water over the gouache areas, it would actually remove that gouache. That's how gouache works. What I figured I would do is I would get all of my light and dark areas with the gouache, and then I'll probably go over it with oil. But what you can do with gouache is take your water and remove the paint from certain areas to give highlights and all of that sort of thing, so you can tell where the dark and light areas are going to be. So that's what I've got to do here. This one is my least completed out of all the ones I've showed you. Obviously, it just has barely started. So this and that Voodoo King one are the two that are the furthest away from being actual paintings. And the first two that I showed you are the closest to being completed. That is the 9 paintings. You know, kind of going through them now got me a little bit excited again about, ooh, I know how to do this, and I'm gonna work on this part. And it just kind of brought that excited feeling about doing art back. And maybe, you know, the stuff that was going on in the outside world kind of crowded my inner space, and I just kind of let it throw me off track a little bit. And it's not that I was not wanting to do art, I just maybe needed a little break, and now I'm gonna come back to it and work on these paintings. I'm trying to tell myself to work on what I've got and no shiny object syndrome. Stop doing that. Finish what you've got and then move on. I hope this video was helpful to you if you have experienced this sort of thing, if what's going on in the world right now has kind of got you down. You know, I was questioning, is this worth it? Is it worth it for me to do art, for me to sit here in my house, and for my art to sit here in my house? Why am I doing this? Ultimately, it comes down to, if you are an artist, I mean, you do it because you do. Like, that's my answer. I do art because I don't know how to do anything otherwise. If I wasn't doing art, I would be pretty unhappy, because I just love to be creative. And this is the way I do that. I hope that if you're struggling, that this might help you. Creativity is important, and it does matter. And we should all take our own advice. If we're telling other people that, we need to remember it for ourselves too. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I will see you next time. Bye!